Hi, it's Chris, and I am here with the ministry training program of Phillips Theological Seminary. This is week 3, and this is your VidLecture. Well, we are starting in today to look actually at the text. We've looked at textual criticism. We have looked at the context in which the New Testament was written over the course of about 100 years. We have been dancing around and skirting around the scriptures, but it is time for us to be jumping into them. And here is one of the real difficulties that I have and having with it's not that I have difficulties with the course, but teaching it, because we have 8 weeks to cover the New Testament. Intro classes in college and in seminary were semesters, 15 weeks long. And so we're looking at just over half of the amount of time in this setting. And so I also know that there's only so much that the human brain can access and assess and assimilate. And even when we've got the longer times, more extended amount of time to study, we're still not going to be able to get all that we need, or I don't know, what do we need to hold on, particularly in this day of information, and when we can access information pretty quickly. So how I'm understanding my role with you is to teach you to find info you may need, places to look, which most of you can be teaching me that. And the other is to give you a sense of what kind of information you may need to access, what kind of information it's important for you to know, to resource, to access, perhaps sometime in your own teaching, and of course in your own study as well. I want to, as we get started into this, I'm going to use a phrase that I'd like to think I heard somewhere, and then again, I'd like to take credit for it, but I'm really not sure. The reason I'd like to give somebody else credit for it is because it is not a very nice phrase, and so I'm taking the risk with this, but I'm going to take it. When we study items, when we study subjects, and particularly something, say, about the New Testament, and this really kept coming home last week when we were talking about textual criticism, it's really dangerous and easy to fall into what I call, here it is, mental masturbation. Sorry, but it's as though we just start playing for the sake of pleasure, and we get caught up in the game, and this is fun. And again, I've said it, I get into this, I love it. I love playing with the text. After worship service I was in this morning, I had a great conversation with a woman who teaches languages, teaches students who are second language. English is their second language. Semantics, we were talking about the dynamics of semantics and all of that. But the reality is, we can get so caught up in the, oh, what if this and that, and back and forth, blah, 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 and not really get to anything that matters, that makes a difference. Have I said sorry? If I haven't, I'm going to repeat it. And if I have, I'm going to repeat it. Anyways, if you have not watched the vid response lecture for week 2 yet, go watch that. You've really got to watch that vid lecture, that vid response from this past week, to appreciate, or at least understand, or get a sense of where I'm heading in this week and beyond. Okay, so when I say, what is it that you need to know into these next, what are we at now, 6 weeks of class? So much of what I could teach you, I don't need to teach you if you've had overview of the Bible. You know what Gospels are. You know what synoptic Gospels are. You know that the book of Acts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, that Acts is written by Luke. You know that John is not a synoptic gospel, and that we're going to look at him separately. That's why we're doing Matthew, Mark, Luke. They're synoptics, Acts being written by Luke. That's why we're putting them together. Those, again, anticipate, I don't want to say expect, like I expect that you have learned this, but I figured you have learned this. And if there are things that you've heard somewhere, but you thought we were going to revisit them here, we were going to cover them, send me an email and tell me, hey Chris, hey Dr. Chris, I really, could you go over this with me? And then we can talk about that. But if you've had overview of the Bible, and again, I know not everybody has had overview of the Bible. I'm coming in this presuming that you know what Pharisees and Sadducees are, that you know what Gospels are, apocryphal imagery, language, and all of that. So I'm not going to any depths at all with that. You've got the intro to the various books with our Fortress Press commentary, Luke Timothy Johnson, your study Bible, and so you can read introductions to the Gospels and the Gospels in Acts. You don't need me to sit here and give you a lecture on that. As I said, what I really want to do is give you a sense of how to read a bit more critically than you likely have done before. So I'm going to, our assignments this week are set up to help you read and use a tool like the Fortress commentary in your teaching and your preaching, and how to read and use those for the sake of the church and the kingdom. Okay, there is self-edification. Again, often that self-edification, reading to strengthen our own faith, is very important to keep grounded. It's very important, but it also can trickle over into mental masturbation when we're not careful. And the word is not only for us, but it is the word to the church and to the kingdom. And that's where I'm really going to be pushing you as we move into starting with this week and ahead. All right. So go watch the vid responses for week 2. Read your reading in Fortress commentary and in Luke Timothy Johnson in particular. Look at the introductions to the Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Acts that are in your study Bible, the study Bible that you use. I'm going to send you links to overviews, brief overview articles for the Gospels and Acts. And I'm sending these to you, even though you've got these, but I want you to see, I'm going to do them from 2 or 3 different theological perspectives. So one from a more conservative tradition, one from a more liberal tradition, and one that's middle of the road, so that you're able to read or see these different perspectives on pretty much the same material. Some are going to speak to you. One maybe in particular may speak to you more than the others because that's within your theological tradition or purview at this time, and vice versa. Take the ones that kind of push you and visit them again. Don't blow them off. Or when you look, just kind of glance over them. And again, the one that pushes you, gives you the most pushback, go back and reread it and spend a little time with that. Because everything has something to teach us and to speak to us about. And I just, before we blow things off or away, I want us to learn to sit with them. You're not going to get tested on that. I'm not asking you to answer questions on any of that. So basically, you're on your honor. It's an honor system here. I'm asking you to do it just because this is the one opportunity to broaden your horizons, your perspectives in this concentrated amount of time that you're taking aside to look at, to study the New Testament. I will say this to you, you probably know this, but maybe I'd be remiss in my teaching if I didn't. The Gospels are really considered to be written later. In context, when you think about the context of New Testament writings, the letters were written before that. Matthew, Mark, and Luke were, as far as everyone can agree, I think, were not written by disciples of Jesus, his actual followers. Only John was more than likely one of the apostles. A lot of people want to just discount the Gospels and these, I mean, here are the eyewitness, supposedly. I always thought they were the eyewitness accounts. Right now they're not written by the eyewitnesses, except, as I say, John. um, so when people say, well, they weren't even there following with him, so it's just stuff that people have made up. But what I love is this whole thought that if so let's just say Matthew's writing, and it's as though we're thinking, oh, he's writing for people who don't even know, and we forget that Matthew has the people who are reading, many of the people that are reading, maybe even most of the people that are reading Matthew's book, no, not most, but many of the people that are reading Matthew's book, and the earlier drafts of it, it's not like there may have not have been earlier drafts of it. They followed Jesus. There are a number of people who got the first draft reads of this, that followed Jesus themselves. And where Matthew was getting it wrong, don't you know that they were going, Matthew, it didn't exactly happen like that. I mean, do you think, is it at all possible that maybe Matthew went back and said, oh, hey, Jan, you had told me about that time when Jesus had all those people up there on that hill, and he was teaching, and there wasn't any food, and then this and this happened, and I know you were the one, Jan, you told me about, and I think Bill may have told me about that, and we just read this, and am I getting this right? And Jan would be like, really, there were only maybe 4,000 of us there, 4,000 men. Then there are us women and children folk, but there were not 10,000 there that day. No. It was really, it was really humid that day, and people just, they weren't able to stay out that long. They weren't hanging around. People are coming, right? So there are the correctives that are going around there. So not so easy to throw it away. Know too that the Jewish community, people in the Jewish community, are reading these Gospels as well. And again, let's go back to Matthew and pieces that would be considered prophetic. If Matthew were to write what didn't happen, when his Jewish community read that, and they weren't understanding Jesus's acts to be, or some of them, right, to be fulfillments of prophecy, there'd have been loud screaming and backlash about that. And to the point even of Matthew's life being in danger. And why would this man, why would he tell a lie, perpetuate lies, put his own life in danger for someone he didn't even know? Right? He's not out there just making it up. So think about that with the Gospels. Again, we tend to, set it as literature, right? And we put it out here, and we forget that those people who wrote it, it's not as though it's me writing about, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln. Right. So if I were to write about Abraham Lincoln, I wouldn't have people who had been there and who knew him. Teddy Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, not likely. That if I were to write about, say, still Nixon, there would be people who had been alive and people I respect that I would want to read what I was writing and say, do I have this right? Matthew, same. Mark, Luke. Even John, I'll bet, to some extent. They're not out there just writing on their own. So think about that with the Gospels. Okay, the book of Acts. I've said to several of you, I love the book of Acts. I think hands down, I'm pretty positive it has been my favorite book for the longest amount of time. I love Acts, and I love it because of the miracles that Jesus's followers are doing. I love it because of the detail that it has. I love it because of what it says to the church and about the church. And that's a huge, big, important piece for me. This is not merely Acts is not merely about the church. It is for the church and for the church today. This book, C. Peter Wagner wrote this book called The Acts of the Holy Spirit, now a number of years ago. And the subtitle on it is, a modern commentary on the book of Acts. And in here, he takes the miracle stories and he makes direct parallels to today and now to probably 20, 30 years ago, and talks about how those miracles are being repeated yet still today. And I'm remiss in not pulling one of them out, and I will try to get this up this week to pull out one of the miracle stories that are in Acts, and then how he treats that information. But C. Peter Wagner's Acts of the Holy Spirit, I'll give you the citation in there. We forget. Here we are again, as I've said this last week, it's the living word. It keeps talking to us over and over and over again. When I was a little girl, I do remember so much asking my dad, do you think that there's going to be a New Testament? And my dad said, there is a New Testament. No, a new Testament. A new Testament. And things have happened. Wouldn't they be included? And he didn't think there would be. And yeah. Anyways, all of that aside, we are the new Testament, right? We're writing the Testament. That's a whole piece of testimony. So instead of leaving what so many of us have done and are doing with our faith and with our relationship with God and with Jesus, we're just leaving it on the page of the Bible somewhere or somehow, and we're not connecting all of that and watching it continue to unleash, so that when we're talking to people about their faith and their faith that they have or their faith that they don't have, or they don't have yet, or they're questioning or they're turning their back on, that we can say, well, the Bible, in whatever it says, and we put this stuff out there. But what we're not doing is saying, and wow, here it is. I talked about that in the Bible. You can blow that off, but how are you going to blow this off? This is what I've seen. This is what a friend of mine has seen. And that is one of the beauties of C. Peter Wagner's book, is he says, I have seen what I'm writing in here. I have seen firsthand, or have it as a firsthand account from somebody that I highly respect and trust. You can trust what's in here. And I trust C. Peter Wagner so much and so greatly that I do believe what is written in here. And maybe even then, particularly because although I've not seen these miracles, and for some of them, my goodness, I've never seen anything anywhere near that, but it's brought home over and over again that it's possible and it's still happening. And I should stay aware and keep my eyes open, because who knows what I've been missing by not looking for it. Acts, again, it's not so much about the church as it is for the church. Chapter 2, write these down, really important. Chapter 2 in Acts, verses 42 through 47. It's what the church is meant to be. It's how the church is meant to look. I'm not talking about worship services, what they're supposed to look like, anything along those lines. What I am talking about, though, is that this is what the church, how we are to treat one another, how we function in the world, the core, the inner core, not the inner core, but the core, the shell, the cocoon of the church. That's what it is, the seed of the church. Chapter 6, verses 1 through 7, the role of elders and ministers and deacons in the church. Those of you that are in the Christian church, Disciples of Christ traditions, or any of the Campbell Stone traditions, and for those of you who aren't familiar with that language, people in the churches of Christ, the Christian churches of Christ, and the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, we are out of what is called the Stone Campbell, we're part of the Stone Campbell stream, out of the Stone Campbell tradition, because our key founders were Thomas and Alexander Campbell, and then a Barton Stone. So that, if you haven't had Disciples History and Polity, you'll get that there. But to say we are within a tradition of elders / ministers, I'll say, and deacons. Well, this sets us up biblically for what that is. And what I really love then is in chapter 7, where it talks about Stephen. Stephen and those of you in Stephen ministry who've heard of Stephen ministry, this is the same Stephen here in chapter 6. He's one of the deacons that's named, and 7 then picks up with Stephen. And Stephen stands up. He's a deacon, mind you. Okay, he gives a sermon that's not too unlike the sermon that Peter makes on what becomes the first day of Pentecost. And Stephen, here's the what's it called? The spoiler alert, right? So if you don't want to know what happens, Stephen, turn this off and skip ahead a couple seconds. But they stone him, and what I love, what I learn out of that is deacons in our disciples Stone Campbell churches. Deacons tend to be the ones who pass the offering plates and the communion trays, right? And if you're a deaconette, a deaconess, sorry, then you might be responsible for filling up the baptistry and handing the towel to the minister and the baptized when they walk out of the baptismal pool, baptistry. So, but here we get to see that Stephen preaches. He preaches and does quite a great job of it at it. So great that they do end up stoning him. One of the other pieces that you could look for in Acts, and that I will be totally remiss if I don't say, when you look at every major movement of God in the book of Acts, you will find that it's preceded by prayer. And somewhere I have a paper that I cannot get my hands onto that I wrote a number of years ago, and it's taken every single occurrence in the book of Acts that is some kind of a ministry or a mission or a situation or a healing, when something has to be done, and particularly when something has to be done and they just can't get moving or get it started, or everything gets into the way, it acts as very explicit that there is prayer that goes on, and then we see the doors open and heaven, earth, whatever needs to move gets moved and moves out of the way. It's that bathing in prayer. And if you get a chance, you think about it, look for all of that there within the book of Acts. All right. Look at the prominence of prayer. That's really what I want to drive home there. Okay. Your post this week, we're stepping out of the cohorts this week to try to do posting this week. I will tell you, I have not done this before, so it may or may not work really, really well, but we're going to give it a shot, and I can make some course adjustments in the next week when I see its feasibility. But here's what I'm thinking. In Fortress, when we get to the commentary parts, I'm open in Acts right now. You'll see that, and hopefully have already seen that they take the books and they have them in sections. So I'm on page 346 in the Fortress Commentary of the New Testament. I'm on page 346, and I'm looking down here at the bottom of page 346, and you see chapter 13:1 through chapter 14:28, Paul's first missionary journey. And in here, there are 3 sections. There's the text in its ancient context, there's the text in its interpretive tradition, and there's the text in contemporary discussion. I will have posted Monday morning an outline for how I want you to approach your work with these texts. I am going to give each one of you several of these sections. We cannot all do them all. I cannot even begin to ask you to read through all these pages. There's no way. You'll never retain it. You'll get caught up in a whole bunch of stuff. What I want us to come out of with this is how to read and use this commentary, how to pull out what's important, how to teach it, because you're going to be sharing with your course mates what it is in the section you're assigned that's important that they should remember. So say in this, I look at this, and the section is Paul's first missionary journey. It's chapter 13, verse 1 through chapter 14, verse 28. That's going to be the heading of my post. And then I'm going to take out of my Bible, I'm going to read it in my Bible, and I'm going to just bullet point the events, what has happened in that on there. So it's boom, 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 boom. What's happened in that section? Then you're going to do another section called My Course Mates Need to Know. And you're going to put out there 2 to 5 bullet points. So that's 2 to 5 absolute max items that your course mates really need to know for when they teach this, or they're going to use it. What do they really need to know that could be important to them? Such as in this one, that chapter 13 is the dividing point in Acts. Chapters 1 through 12 focus on Peter and Jerusalem, and chapters 13 through 28 focus on Paul and beyond. This is also the first of Paul's 3 missionary journeys. They start here. Now, here's another little piece I didn't know. This whole idea of missionary journeys, that Paul had 3 missionary journeys, that doesn't come up until the 1800s. I didn't know that. So you're going to do 2 to 5 of these points, and write. Again, I mean, they're just short points, and I'm going to have this up there. You're going to see the format, so you're going to know exactly what to do. Okay. Then contemporary discussion, that's going to be 1 to 2 points. Oh, okay. So those first 2, what course mates need to know is going to come from the ancient context section, I can't even see, interpretive tradition section, and from your study Bible. And then, and any other sources that you may draw in, another study Bible you've used, an article that you've seen, something that you've done. But remember, you only get 2 to 5 of these points. All right. And then there's a third section here in the commentary, the text and contemporary discussion. And you're going to use that for the next session. So you have events, what my course mates need to know, contemporary discussion, and that's 1 to 2, if any, bullet points that tell us this is why this section is figuring prominently in conversations today. Again, this is really about what is important for your course mates need to know, what it's important for your course mates to know. So if you didn't see anything there that seems to be really important, relevant, don't put it down there. Make the call. You make the call. You be the teacher. In the scope of this course, right? Is it really important? Whatever it is. Okay. If so, no more than 2 bullet points. The last section of this is going to be so what? So what? Why does this matter? This piece matter? So the 2 parts of this is, how does this passage apply to a congregation? So as I've said there at the end section of chapter 2 in Acts, you've got what belongs in the church, if you will, right? What are the key points of church? What do churches do, right? They eat together, so fellowship together. They take care of one another, right? They sell when they have need. They pool all their resources. They spend their time in prayer, and they spend their time in teaching. So we have that, and in praising God. So, we've got the worship function, the discipling function, the ministry function, taking care of what's inside the church is ministry, and then taking care of taking the word out. That's outside, that's mission. Okay. So that's in that passage, that's what's really important. What is the importance for its importance? Because in this whole section, in Acts 2, blah, 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 it gives us what the church needs to is the outline, if you will, for what every church needs to be, or what needs to be in the church. What makes a church a church? Can you tell I'm doing this a little off my head? So then, so the other part of this, so it's, how does this passage apply to a congregation and or what inspiration, ideas, information, etc. can you use from this passage to build a bridge between Jesus and a not yet or no longer Christian? This is that. If you've watched that vid response from last week, you know why I'm asking this question. It's extremely important. This is, again, there's the edification, the self-edification that goes into this that's really important. But we're concerned. This is about your ministry here, friends. This is about what you're going to be working with in the church, and working with your church. You need some biblical grounding, and you need some biblical inspiration, and you need this, and you need to be doing this. We need to be doing this together so that we can keep each other into checks and balance, because for these 6 weeks, we're all we have in this. Maybe we'll be all we have for a little while to go, while we're out doing so many things that we have to do. So 4 sections, events, a bullet point list of the events. Bum, 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 bum. This is what happened. My course mates, section 2, my course mates need to know what are the 2 to 5 max items they need to know. Contemporary discussion. And this isn't just these nice OGs pieces. These are, it's helpful to know that Acts is into dividing points, or is in 2 parts. Contemporary discussion. How are we using this? Why is this significant in discussion today? If any, 1, no more than 2. And then the so what. This is the real biggie for me, folks. I want to see you. Do you know what happened? The events, extremely important. What happened in these sections? What events? These are your touch points. This is what you're trying to be reminded. Start to get your memories together for remembering. Then, so what? How does this passage apply to a congregation? And then what inspiration, ideas, information, etc. can you use to build bridges between not yet or no longer Christians and Jesus? Okay, you're going to have the guide. It's going to be there for you. Oh my gosh, as I'm thinking about this is just so filled and full of stuff. I'll tell you what, I'm going to let you off the hook this week. You're not going to have to read, you're not going to have to respond to the question about what you read in the New Testament this last week. We're going to get this up here. We're going to get these posted. I'm going to give you what your sections are. Monday morning, you'll know what your sections are in this. I'm also going to get you ready with, no, that's all I'm going to do. We're going to do that. I will also, towards middle of the week, end of the week, I will give you what your reading sections are going to be for the next week. So for week 4, you'll know what you're going to be what your sections are. We're going to follow the same outline. As far as I can tell, again, we may tweak it a little bit, but as far as I can tell, we'll have that, here's the section, here's the events section, my course mates need to know section, contemporary discussion section, and the so what section, and then we can fill those in. We're going to keep going in those places. So a lot of stuff. I know as always, I'm tossing a lot of things at you. You are pushing me and challenging me. I got to preach this morning, and I was just talking about what a delight and a joy you all are, and how you're really again, you're pushing me and getting me and exciting me in ways I just have not had a chance to be excited about studying the Bible and playing with the Bible a little bit in a long time. So you reminded me how much I know, and I'm continuously in the know of how much I love the Word, but how much I love being able to wrestle with it and to allow it to wrestle with me in community like this, in the depths and the deepening. Thank you so much, so much. And with that, I am going to let you go. I'll look for you on the forums. I have another piece I'm going to give to you too. So just be kind of looking for some notes from me up there on the discussion forum this week, and we will go from there. Again, thank you. I hope your Sabbath has been a good one, regardless of how short it's been. But I do hope you have been praying that you've gotten some Sabbath. And if you have not, please, right now, take and open your calendar and find 1 hour that you're going to take for Sabbath for you. All right. Take care. And I'll talk to you all along our ways. Bye-bye.